So this is just a screencast in relation to the assessment and feedback process here at Sheffield Hallam University. So what do you need to know about assessment? So there are standard assessment regulations, and these are otherwise known as the assessment regs. They are linked within this slide, so if you did want to go and look at them in a little bit more detail, they do cover everything to do with the assessment at Sheffield Hallam University. Information about all the Sheffield Hallam University terms and conditions and about student regulations can be found, again linked within this slide, and these form part of the legal relationship between you and Sheffield Hallam University. The terms and conditions cover everything from admissions, assessment, conduct, discipline, fitness to practice, your fees, IT, intellectual property, and talk you through complaints and appeals. So what sort of assessments are there here at Sheffield? So there's the formative assessments and there's summative assessment. So formative assessments may be required within modules, but these marks and feedback don't count towards your final module mark. These are important activities to help you feed into the assessment process and learn from the module team. It allows you to be able to check your learning and progress and provide feedback, and then find out where you are in relation to your final submission piece. The summative assessment will require you to undertake one, possibly more tasks, and they will count towards your final module mark. They can be in different formats, such as written assignments, practical exams, sometimes vivas, and always check the assessment brief for each module that you're undertaking on the module site, which is located on the Blackboard site. So all your assessment dates are housed on your student record for the modules that you're enrolled in for your upcoming academic year. It's important you know each assessment deadline and that you make a note of each. Make sure that you know the key dates and plan them out for the whole year so that you can organise your time, organise any revision that you may need to do, and also any reading that you may need to do around some of your written pieces. For each module you study, there's an assigned Blackboard site, and that's located through My Hallam, and this is called your shoe space. Your assessment brief, the marking criteria, deadlines, and guidance can be found on ShoeSpace, so please familiarise yourself with these prior to starting or undertaking any of the assessment process. In relation to word count, the word count includes all text, citations, and tables. It excludes the front sheet and any references that you may have, and also appendices. Detailed regulations are linked within this slide, and just making sure that when you're doing your referencing that you use the APA referencing style 6th edition. If you're unsure about referencing, then there are some really useful tools located on the organisational site under study support, and also the library here at Sheffield Hallam also have some really good supportive resources around how to use referencing. So these are all worth looking at prior to undertaking assessment. So how do you know what to do for each module assessment? So there's learning outcomes for each module, and each module has up to 4 learning outcomes. There's a minimum pass criteria in order to make sure that you've attained that learning outcome. There's the assessment criteria, and this details what you must demonstrate to show you've achieved each of the learning outcomes. And there are different bandings to indicate different levels of achievement. And then there's the assessment brief. Now the assessment brief has all the detailed information about each information task, and you should follow this guidance carefully so the work done matches what the assessment brief is asking for. Your work is assessed by a module marking team, and you will have an allocated marker who will assess your performance against the module learning outcomes and assessment marking criteria, and then give you an overall mark for your work. If there is more than one task, your task marks will be used to calculate your overall module mark. And then moderation of the work will take place after the work has been marked, but before you receive your marks. This is an example of the Level 4 assessment grid for coursework and presentation. These do vary slightly depending on the level you're being assessed at, and also the type of assessment that you're undertaking. So as you can see along the top, there are 4 columns, so looking at subject knowledge and understanding, the intellectual skills, subject-specific skills and application to practice, and also your transferable skills. So down the left-hand side, you can see the scale and the marks that we're able to award you. They range from 100, 96, 89, 81, 74, 68, 65 and 62 on this page. Now, when we looked at awarding marks across different markers, what we found is that the parity between the markers was much improved if we were only able to give certain marks. So the marks on the left-hand side are the only marks that you will be able to achieve. And then if we go further down, we can look at 58, 55, 52, 48, 50, 45 and 42. Now they're all the marks that you can achieve in order to pass at level, at undergraduate level. And then in relation to postgraduate level, you would need to achieve above 50%. As you can see down the left-hand side, they relate to different degree classifications. So within the 40s, you're looking at third. Within the 50s, you're looking at a 2-2. And within the 60s, you're looking at a 2-1. And then anything that is over 70%, you're looking at achievement of a first class degree. So what is the moderation process? So each module has an internal moderator who is a member of staff external to the module team. The person will look at a sample of work from all markers to ensure that markers have interpreted the assessment criteria and applied this criteria in the same way when assessing student work, just to increase parity across markers. For any practical exams or any face-to-face assessments you may have, the internal moderator may be present in the room, or the exam may be recorded to enable moderation to occur. Again, this just ensures that between markers that we've got a good consistent level of marking. Internal moderation happens before your provisional marks are released to you. After internal moderation has occurred, a sample of that work is then sent to an external examiner who is from another university. They again ensure that there's parity between markers and that the mark set is coherent. The marks are then presented at one of the departmental assessment boards during the academic year. And these can be at any specific point during the year, and we will take certain modules through different boards depending on when they form. At this point, marks are ratified and they'll be confirmed before appearing on your student record. So what happens if you're unhappy with your mark? Once the internal moderation process has taken place, it's unlikely that your mark will be altered. You can, however, make an appeal after the marks have been ratified at a departmental assessment board if you feel that the assessment process has not been upheld. So what happens if you feel you're not able to submit your work online or you're not able to attend an assessment? The first thing you need to do is contact the student support advisor for your course. Try and do this as early as you think that you might have problems with the upcoming assessment date or submission deadline. Your student support advisor will be able to discuss the options available to you and may agree on an extension, and I'll help you apply for a request to repeat the assessment attempt, otherwise known as a VAR. So what happens if you submit a piece of work or attend an assessment or don't attend an assessment at the agreed time? Then if you've not discussed your concerns with your student support advisor and don't submit your work, then this will be classed as a non-submission, unless you've submitted a RAR and it's been submitted and accepted. If you're confirmed as a non-submission, you will go through the assessment board as a refer. This means that you will have to do the reassessment task and pass each task in order to pass the module. If passed, each specific task mark would then be capped at 40% for undergraduate and 50% for postgraduate. So what is in-module retrieval, or IMR? So IMR is available on certain tasks within specific modules. If you achieve less than 40% for undergraduate or less than 50% for postgraduate in an assessment task at your first attempt, if IMR is available on that module, then you will be able to rework that assessment task before the marks go to an assessment board. This is a no-risk opportunity to make good on the original assessment task with the benefit of using your feedback to improve your work. If you achieve for postgraduate. If you don't achieve 40% or 50%, your highest mark between your first try and your IMR will then go through the assessment board as a refer. You will still have the same reassessment opportunity. And if you don't attempt the assessment task at first try, then the IMR option, if it's available, is not allowed. So if you get a mark of less than 40% at undergraduate or less than 50% at postgraduate in a module, you'll be given a reassessment opportunity. This may be via IMR or via a resubmission task. You will need to be reassessed on each task you got less than 40% in if there's more than one task in a module. The date for resubmission will be given after the original mark has been confirmed at an exam board. Please note that sometimes the exam boards are 2 or 3 months after the original submission date, so please note that there may be a delay in when your reassessment task may be. If you pass the reassessment task, each task will be capped at 40% for undergraduate or 50% for postgraduate. If you do not pass the reassessment task, then you will fail the module. So what happens if you fail the module after doing the reassessment tasks? For undergraduate students, the course requires you to pass each module through the first and the second attempt. There is no re-registration, so you cannot retake a failed module. If this happens, you will need to leave the course. For postgraduate students, if the module is a core module to your course, you will need to apply to re-register on the module at its next delivery and take the module again. If it's an elective option, you may redo it or choose another module of equivalent credits. You may only re-register once for any module. So what do you do if you feel you're unable to complete the assessment to the best of your ability due to illness or some personal issues? If this happens, then you must arrange to speak with your student support advisor for your course immediately to advise of anything affecting your ability to complete an assessment. This might include medical conditions, changes to your health, or issues with personal circumstances. Your SSA will be able to discuss your options, which may be agreeing an extension or applying for a RAR. So how do you apply for a request to repeat an assessment attempt or a RAR? You would discuss this with your SSA, complete the documentation to apply for a RAR with the support or assistance of your student support advisor. The RAR request must be submitted no later than 5 working days after the assessment deadline, together with any documentary evidence required. Following this, the RAR panel within the faculty will consider the information and decide whether to accept it or not. You will then be informed of the panel's decision. If the RAR is accepted and you have not passed the original assessment, your mark will be confirmed at the assessment board as a defer, and you may redo the assessment. Your mark will then not be capped at 40%. So when do you receive feedback? After all your assessments, both formative and summative, you will receive feedback. Formative feedback arrangements are module specific, and you'll be notified of these by your module leader. The marking and moderation process may take up to 3 working weeks. This allows for marking to take place, moderation, and time to take into account and process any RARs that have been submitted. And remember, these deadlines can be submitted up to 5 working days after the assessment deadline. If you have agreed an extension, the feedback timings are from your new deadline and not from when the feedback would normally be made available. So this may cause a delay in you receiving your feedback and may be different to the rest of your cohort. Summative feedback when submitting by the original given deadline. So written coursework assessments. We aim to release the marks and feedback 15 working days from the deadline. Marking of written coursework usually uses the full standard SHU turnaround times for assessment to enable teams of markers and the moderator to complete all the processes. For practical, presentation and Viva assessments, we aim to release marks and feedback 15 working days from the last assessment on the module timetable. So please bear in mind this may be more than 15 working days from your assessment if assessments are running over the course of a whole week. So for example, if your exam was on a Monday and the last exam for the module was on the Friday, then the 15 working days would start from the Friday of that week. So what format is feedback given to you in? So there could be written feedback, and if it is written coursework, you will receive annotations on your script. Your submission should therefore be in a Word format and not PDF, unless your module team has advised a specific format for your submission. You will also receive a separate sheet with the assessment criteria highlighted. This sheet will provide a brief overall summary of key points to read together with your annotations. If it's a poster or alternative submission format requiring written feedback but cannot be annotated, you will receive your feedback via the highlighted marking criteria and summary sheet. So for audio feedback, so things like practical assessments and Viva assessments, some assessments receive the audio type, which will be your marker's verbal recording of the feedback according to your performance in a practical exam. You will receive an audio file to listen to, and your mark will be available on My Grades as usual. So what do you do if you don't understand your feedback? Please make sure you've read or accessed all elements of your feedback. If you still don't understand, then you should contact your specific marker with a specific request to aid understanding. What should you do once you've received your feedback? So feedback's imperative in order to progress as a student academically, clinically and professionally. To learn from feedback, you need to be active in the process. Take time to read and listen to your feedback. This can sometimes be uncomfortable if you feel you've put in a lot of effort into the assessment and if it's been not been rewarded in the way that you expected. Revisit your work and make notes for consideration and reflection. You may wish to write an action plan for your future assessments and share this with your academic advisor, and also discuss with your peers if you think this might be helpful. So what kind of questions should you be asking yourself when you're reflecting on your feedback? What have you misunderstood? What did you need to understand better? What should you do in order to gain further understanding? And what do you need to add to your work? And what potentially do you need to change? If you have any questions, please feel free to email myself, so Charlotte Pedley at c.pedley@shu.ac.uk.